guys, welcome back to Legal Banter. Now privacy again is in news. This time it's all because of a decision of the Allahabad High Court. The High Court in an important ruling in the case of Safia Sultana versus State of UP has held that the notice requirement under the Special Marriage Act is unconstitutional because amongst other things it violates a person's right to privacy that is guaranteed under Article 21, also Article 14 which is the right of equality of a person. Today's video is about dissecting and analyzing that decision. A format that is easy to understand is the IRAC analysis. I've also made a prior video on IRAC analysis which I will provide the link in the description box and you can also check it on the screen. Now we are going to do an IRAC analysis of this case, meaning thereby that we will be bifurcating the case into 4 parts. We will identify the issue in the case. We will then move on to the rule that is identified by the court. We will analyze the court's judgment followed by the conclusion of the case. Before I start talking about the first component, which is the issue of the case, let me give you a little bit of background. Special Marriage Act was a law enacted in the year 1954 to allow couples which were either interfaith or they belonged to different castes to be able to get married. This law allows them to solemnize their marriage through the court procedure without any requirements of religious ceremonies that are to be held, meaning thereby that this is a religion neutral law, and this law used to provide a safe route to interfaith or intercaste couples. However, Section 5, 6 and 7 read together put a mandatory requirement on such couples to first of all notify to the concerned authorities, the sub-divisional magistrate or the registrar's office, to notify about their intention to marry. This would be an advance notice at least to be given 30 days prior. Not only were they mandated to give this notice would also be publicized, meaning thereby that the concerned authorities will publish this information and the contents of this notice for public, which meant that under Section 7, any person who had an objection to the solemnization of such marriage could register and could project their objections before the registrar. This was the issue before the court. Let's start with the IRAC analysis. The first segment of the IRAC analysis is I, which stands for issue. The issue in this cases were manifold. For this purpose, we are only going to focus on one. The petitioners had contended before the court that the mandatory notice requirement under Special Marriage Act, which were provided in Section 5 and 6, were violative of their various fundamental rights. Notably, they contended that this requirement violated their right to privacy, which was enshrined under Article 21 and has been recognized by the court in the case of Puthuswamy. Further, the parties were also of the contention that such a requirement also violated their right of equality since no other laws required such a notice. Let's now move on to the second part. The second part is R, which stands for rule. The concerned rule in this case are Special Marriage Act provisions 5, 6 and 7 read together. Whereas 5 and 6 are about giving away the mandatory requirement of notifying the concerned authorities, 7 is about allowing any person in the public domain to go and object about the intended marriage. These provisions read together was contended by the petitioners that they took away an important intimate part of their lives, since they were required to give out intimate details about themselves as well as their lives. So the ruling or the concerned rule were Section 5, 6 and 7. Moving on to the third part of the analysis. This is A, which stands for analysis or application. Now what do we do in this section is we look at the rule that we have identified and we try to superimpose this rule over the issue. Issue being the smaller subset and rule being the larger set. The rule in this case are provisions of Special Marriage Act, and the issue is that do these provisions violate a person's rights to privacy as well as a person's rights to equality. While analyzing this issue and the arguments that unfolded, Justice Vivek Chaudhary, the concerned judge in the case, looked over various aspects. He made certain notable observations and also relied on various landmark decisions that have happened in the past concerning a person's right to marry. The court referred to landmark cases like the Hadia case, the Shakti Vahini case, the case of Lata Singh, amongst other. The court also relied on the Puthuswamy judgment to identify privacy as an important epithet of Article 21. While the court reached the said conclusion, which I will be discussing in the next segment, the court had various reasons or rationale for it to decide so. First of all, the court noted that this was an old law. It was enacted in the year 1954, and the situations that prevailed in those times were very different from the situations that prevailed in today's time. Hence, the court wanted an interpretation of the law to be given in such a manner that it was contemporary and dynamic, or as we call it, modern, and not to be based on the obsolete nature of a law that was enacted many decades earlier. The court also believed the idea that if a person was forced to accept and notify intimate details about their private lives, such a law did not require any other aspects to be covered. There were no other laws that provided or sought other couples to notify of a similar thing. Hence, the court also accepted the fact that this special and peculiar provision of the Special Marriage Act did create an inequality or an unequal treatment for couples who went under Special Marriage Act. The court also referred to the 242nd Law Commission report, which had also sought to make this mandatory requirement of giving a notice from mandatory to voluntary. The commission had insisted that this be made a directory requirement and not something that would require or demand punishment if it was not fulfilled. The court also, while referring to previous decisions on similar issues pertaining to right to marry and right to choose, also stated that over a period of time, especially after 2006, when the case of Lata Singh was decided, the court has started prioritizing private autonomy over such public rights. The court also believed that while examining a law for determining its constitutional validity, the focus should always be on the effect of such a law and not on what was the object. We can have a very peculiar scenario where the object of the law could be something else, but the effect is completely contrasting. An example of this can be drawn from section 377 of the Indian Penal Code. At the time when section 377 was incorporated in the IPC, the purpose or the object was to discourage people from indulging into acts which did not lead to procreation, which was always believed as the natural order of law. On the other hand, the effect that it started to have was that it allowed, or it became a tool of misuse and abuse in the hands of executive or people in the police forces to either extort or in any manner harass members of the homosexual community. So the court took this into consideration and stated that whenever we are trying to understand that whether a law should be held as constitutionally valid or not, one should not focus on what the law object behind that law was, but rather what the effect of that law turns out to be actually. If I could actually summarize the entire thought process of the court by way of a mathematical formula. The court added two components, the first component being the right of autonomy or the right of a person's right to choose who they wanted to marry. To this, the court added the effect of a law to be considered from what the law has the effect and not what is the context or the purpose of law. After these two were put together, it led to, or the court found it to be equal to, the fact that provisions of Special Marriage Act which mandated of making a notice under section 5 and 6 were held to be not mandatory but directory. We now move on to the last leg of the analysis, which is C, or conclusion. The conclusion of this case is that from now on, at least in the state of UP, the requirement of giving a notice under Special Marriage Act is no more mandatory, which means that if parties choose not to notify the authorities about their intention to marry and further subject to that, no publication of that information, this action or inaction rather will not invite any punishment under the Special Marriage Act. This used to be the case before this judgment. One can say that this judgment will serve as an important pushback on the continuous state's interference on the right of marry. With the enactment of the UP Ordinance on Anti-Conversion and various other related laws that other states seem to follow, the state is continuously coming down on a person's right of choosing who they want to marry and how. You can actually understand the unethical paradox that such laws have created. If I were to give you my take on it, you can actually say that since the scenario in today's time for interfaith or intercaste couples is like choosing between the devil and the deep sea. By devil, I mean the provision of mandatory requirement under the Special Marriage Act. Understand the peculiarity. The Special Marriage Act requires, at least it used to, that you need to give a mandatory notice. The couples, in order to escape this mandatory notice, because most likely this 30-day period, the advance period that had to be given, was sufficient for either parties, families or relatives to be able to pressurize them into backing off. So such couples, in order to evade such a problem, would rather choose the path of converting to other person's religion and then solemnizing the marriage. But now, with the coming of anti-conversion laws, whereby an act of conversion for marriage also stands punishable, it does not remain much of a choice to such interfaith couples. They can either choose to follow the Special Marriage Act provisions, notify and stand the chance of being pressurized into submission by the relatives, or they undergo an act of conversion, which now for the present is a punishable offense. We do have a PIL pending in the Supreme Court based on the issue, which is where the Supreme Court has to decide the constitutional validity of such anti-conversion laws. I've also made a video on that separately. I will provide a link in the description box. I recommend you to check it out. I hope you liked this video and learned something new. If you liked the content, please like, share, comment and subscribe to my channel Legal Banter. Thank you so much for watching.